Hello, and welcome. With Queen Dizzy being just a month away, I wanted to give my take on what makes Dizzy feel like the character she is, what needs to stay exactly the same, what can be iterated on and changed a little bit while keeping the same themes, and what should just be straight up removed or replaced. Dizzy is the character that's always kept me coming back to Guilty Gear as a series, and it's no different with Strive. I haven't touched the game since Season 1, but the second I saw she was announced for Season 4, I had to pick it back up and start getting good. But long intros get boring, so let's jump right into what needs to stay the same. I think there is one major mechanic that needs to stay to keep Dizzy's identity intact, and that would be her air movement, specifically her double air dash. This is really what drew me to Dizzy over any other character in the series, was her unique mix of speed with light zoning tools and heavy Oki, and especially the way that her two air dashes interact with the rest of her kit. You can use it for cross-ups with a fish, you can use it to back away and then set up more zoning full screen, or you can use it to abate an approach and then back out and set up a bubble or something. I think this, more than anything else, defines Dizzy at a mechanical level, and she would feel much different, and I argue worse, if she didn't have the option for this double air dash going forward in Strive. Past this, though, we move on to what normals I think need to stay the same, of which there are only two. These ones I think are iconic and core to Dizzy. It is this 4S from Xrd, which used to be her far slash back in earlier versions, and her 2S, for different reasons. I think the 4S adds a lot of flavor to her combos, because you can do any standard far slash combo, but it just feels nice to land a multi-hitting move in the middle of there, but especially when you get your opponent cornered, and you have a bit of a juggle going, getting that multi-hit off always feels good to continue the juggle. With more juggle opportunities in Strive, I think it would be a big miss to not have this move there, just as combo filler because of the way it feels. It's also nice that Dizzy has this button as a decent, kind of neutral reset button in pressure. It's +1 on block, which is not really enough for you to be at an advantage, especially with how far it pushes you out even on hit, but that's enough that you can end a block string that you realize is not going to go anywhere with just this into maybe spear or a fish or just backing up to keep yourself safe and reset to neutral. I think this button has been very core to Dizzy for a very long time, and to be without it would be very sad. The other button is 2S, and this one comes for two reasons. One, I think it's kind of iconic. I mean, she's had it for so long. And two, I'm currently playing Testament in Strive, and I'm a little jealous of the characters that have two S's that are good anti-airs. My other character is Abba, and her having that button lets her just anti-air anything directly above her for free, and then combo into Jealous Rage. Whereas Testament, yes, has an insane 6p, but that 6p doesn't really lead into any damage. I think this button has a precedent to exist on Dizzy, and should continue as such, because I want that good anti-air. As for special moves, there are three that all go hand in hand to create Dizzy's unique combo structure: Spear, Spike, and Bubble. While there have been a couple different iterations of these moves, the basic ideas are the same. Spear is a projectile that helps in neutral, but can be a multi-hitting combo tool when up close and juggling the opponent. Bubble can provide good Ogi, as well as knock up on stray hits, but can also be used mid-combo to continue bouncing the opponent and tacking on extra damage. And Spike is a satisfying combo ender that at the right heights gives Dizzy a good knockdown to continue her Oki game. These three moves make up the core of Dizzy's mid-screen and corner combos across all versions, and lacking any of them massively nerfs her combo game. Take her first appearance in Guilty Gear X. She didn't have Bubble in that game, and while I'm no expert on X, her combo game felt severely weakened when I briefly tried the game out. Now, while my X gameplay clearly leaves much to be desired, it's a fact that when I went back and played this older version, I felt myself missing Bubble more than anything. Compared to Plus R, I basically had no option for a double overhead with Bubble, no easy corner carry confirms, and I had a much harder time finding a situation where I could make use of the initial hitbox on the Icicle attack. Take one piece out of her puzzle, and the combo structure starts to degrade. Without bubbles, it becomes hard to loop icicles, and without icicles, it's hard to loop bubbles. Without the ice spikes, or oftentimes the flame geyser in Rev 2, her combos are forced to end in strange positions due to the pushback on her moves, or you're forced to forgo Oki and knockdown. Xrd also proved that with access to meter, Ice Spike RC can be a potent neutral tool, bringing versatility to all of these special moves no matter what stage of the game you're in. For these reasons, I think that Bubble, Icicle, and Ice Spike need to stay functionally the same in Strive. But, perhaps shocking to some of you,
These are the only things that I believe should not change in any major way. Next up is her most iconic move, the fish, and I think that there's some room for iteration in this special move. The fish, conceptually, need to stay the same. A summon that interacts with the opponent and that can block a single hit of damage if struck directly. But that's where it ends. Across X, XX, and Xrd, the functions of each fish changed, with the exception of the P-fish. To go through them, in all versions the P-fish travels a short distance and bites between 2 and 3 times, and is best used as a meaty option or a niche combo tool. The K-fish in X and Xrd is similar to the P-fish, except it travels farther across the screen for use in very specific combos or as a weaker meaty on an opponent who's too far away to be hit by the P-fish. But in plus R, the K-fish is a short-range, multi-hitting summon that's often simply outclassed by the other options. The S and H fish function the same in plus R and Xrd, being a summon that after a short delay fires a laser full screen, either upwards into the air or downwards around crouching height. But the H fish in X fires a laser only after a short range bite, yet that often whiffs on most crouching opponents. All these laserfish are generally used in combos where you need to position yourself without letting the opponent recover, or in neutral as zoning tools. Finally, every version has what I would call a defensive fish. In plus R and Xrd, that would be the dust fish, and in X it's actually the S fish. While all of these have utility and value when used on offense, especially the plus R version, they are by far the best at keeping Dizzy safe from retaliation. In order of game, the S-Fish in X hovers right next to Dizzy and bites the opponent if they get too close, then teleports back to her side. It can bite twice before disappearing. This can be used to keep Dizzy safe while applying risky pressure, to extend a block string, or as a preemptive measure against an approaching opponent. In plus R, the Dustfish does a massive leap backwards before lurching forward and biting, causing a stagger on hit. Since the fish did not go away if Dizzy was hit until Xrd, this version of Dustfish could punish an opponent for landing their attack. If she used it just before an incoming attack, it would dodge behind her and then stagger the opponent during their recovery frames, even though they landed their hit. This fish also has great applications in combos due to its delayed but powerful single hit. Finally, in Xrd, the Dustfish was changed to act more like a parry, blocking one hit, then quickly tracking the opponent's position, biting them for a stagger. It acts like a purely defensive version of the Dustfish from plus R. Now, why go through the trouble of explaining all of these individually? Well, it was to highlight the substantial differences in fish design across the versions of the game. In X, almost every fish would whiff on a crouching opponent, but hitting Dizzy would never cause the fish to despawn, making them bad for neutral pressure, but decent at punishing and strong in actual block pressure. In plus R, the Dustfish plus some lasers to cover space is all you really need. If the Dustfish ever lands, the reward is massive. In that game, fish are very high pressure, and since they can actually hit crouching opponents, they can be used in neutral. Furthermore, Dizzy can also program a second attack into her fish in that game, making them all the more threatening, and removing most of the risk of summoning them long range and neutral. Xrd arguably has the strongest fish Oki, thanks to the better state of the P-fish in that game. The shorter cooldown on fish also allows more uses of the long-range H-fish to zone and cover space. Thanks to Wild Assault and Deflect Shield, there will be no Dustfish in Strive, but I think this is all the more reason for a redesign of some of her options going forward. The P-Fish has stayed mostly the same across all versions and should probably continue to do so, and I believe that the H-Fish laser covering grounded approaches is important to her neutral game, especially in a slower game like Strive, but K and S could be entirely new buttons without negatively impacting the character. Honestly, as long as she has one fish that's good for Oki and one that's decent in neutral, I think any type of design, different mechanics or whatever, could be good going forward. Before moving on to the things that I think suck and should just be removed, replaced, or changed, I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of moves that I would just like to see come back, even if I don't think they're realistic. The biggest one of these would be her original JS from X, which also got changed into her J2S and plus R. It's just a really good jumping button. It's a good IAD option, it's a good air-to-air, it's a good air-to-ground, it can potentially cross up, but importantly, I think Dizzy is currently, in the state of her in Xrd, lacking a good jump in option that can hit the ground. The best you have is your JH, but compared to the JH from plus R, it's just not as good. So giving her some sort of button that's actually a good air to ground that's not just a JK I think would be very nice, and I have an attachment to her original JS. Finally, on to the garbage. Starting off with the Crescent specials. Yes, they have their uses, but underwhelming is too nice of a word for these. The recovery has always been brutal. The startup was passable, but with how fast they go into the air, they're rarely useful. They're not good for Oki, they can't really be comboed into in pressure even if you wanted to. At best, they're an okay anti-air, but looking forward into Strive, everyone has insane 6Ps, and you still have 2S, so why would you bother anti-airing with this thing that leads into nothing? The only case where these have ever had a shred of usefulness was in Xrd because of the really early YRC point on the fire wheel. That could give you some plus frames. But why would you do that when you could just do Ice Spike YRC or anything else with your meter whatsoever? I would not shed a tear for these to be gone, and I would especially like them to be replaced with a far better move. And finally, her supers. Every single super Dizzy has ever had has sucked. Bad. Personally, I love Necro Unleashed. I like the coffin, it's funny. But it wasn't very good. It was an awful reversal. I just like it because command grab supers are cool. But when it comes to usefulness, Imperial Ray does nothing in the corner and is still pretty bad mid-screen in every version. Necro Unleashed is unreliable at best because even pre-jump frames get away from it. The Mirror is a tragically bad reversal because of how close range it is with niche applications and high stun combos. And then there's Gamma Ray. Need I say more? 100 meter for a super that can whiff at close ranges in some games and otherwise just doesn't really do a whole lot. It's like spending an extra 50 meter for an extra 50 damage on Ram's Calvados. That's just not good. Now, Imperial Ray and Gamma Ray I would like to see stay in name because of the references to Justice, which I think is an important part of Dizzy's character, but they need to be changed big time for Strive. I think it would be cool to have Gamma Ray since Slayer has Last Horizon, but I don't know if I would take that over just having two actually good supers. As it stands right now, if Dizzy has supers this bad in Strive, then Wall Break is going to be a real big problem for her. She wants hard knockdown, but these supers are not good, even for that. Well, if you watched this whole way, thanks for watching. This video is mostly for fun, while I very impatiently wait for the 31st to arrive so I can start playing Dizzy and Strive. My favorite three characters were always Dizzy, Testament, and Justice. With Justice likely to never return and Testament being totally different, I'm hopeful Dizzy will be at least somewhat similar to her old versions. Now, I still like Testament, and even if Dizzy's a grappler, I'm gonna play her, but, you know, it'd be nice to have my character back. This is my first time really dealing with video editing, and I can already see a whole lot of improvement. So, thank you, anyone who wanted to watch, and if you want to see some actually good Dizzy gameplay when she comes out in Strive, stay tuned. I'll be playing her, and I will be good.